Welcome to Redefining Medicine, an intimate and personalized program that illustrates a different side of the practice of medicine. Our in-depth conversations will focus on mentors and motivators who are consistently reshaping, redefining, and rediscovering the field of medical healthcare. I would like to welcome Dr. Gary Huber, a highly respected lecturer surrounding hormone replacement therapies, cardiovascular care, and sports medicine. Before transitioning to integrative care, Dr. Huber spent 2 decades as an emergency medicine physician. He has also developed the successful and widely utilized Huber Personalized Weight Loss Program. What initially sparked your interest to study medicine?
I'm sure, like a lot of people, I have an interest in biology and I want to help people. But it was really kind of that. I remember going to my guidance counselor and saying, what should I be doing? And what do you like? Yeah, I like the sciences. Well, of course, they gravitate you in that direction. Truth be told, my desire was to be an airline pilot. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. You walk in, you look in that cockpit, and there's 1,000 dials and buttons, and you're like, these guys know exactly what every one of those buttons does. That is so cool. So I kind of found that in medicine, because as I got into biology and began to look at physiology and chemistry, it's the same thing. There are millions of things going on, and to be able to understand how all those things are moving and how they relate kind of gave me that same thrill, solving the puzzle. So it was just through basically biology, but then getting into, and interesting too, my neighbor was a dentist, and he was a great guy, right? And when you're young, you're influenced by everybody around you. So I thought, I'm going to be a dentist, because that's what a dentist looks like, and that's how they're cool. Well, then I got into my pre-dentistry at University of Dayton, and then you look at the pre-meds and you think, I'm just going to limit myself to this little tiny orifice when there's this whole magnificent body. So kind of sparked my interest to go a little bit deeper.
And you spent 20 years as an ER physician?
I did. Again, I thought I was going to go into orthopedics. I damaged my knee in college, and sports were very important to me. And this orthopedist gave me my life back, gave me my sports back. So I thought, I'm going to go do that. But the more I got into it, like any field, there's good and bad to every specialty. And there was a lot of downside to the surgical orthopedic field. And I finished my internship, still not certain what I wanted to do, because I dedicated all of my electives toward orthopedics. And then decided, no, I don't think I can see myself doing that for a lifetime. And a friend of mine said, well, while you're waiting to decide, come work in my ER, a small little contract with a small ER. Just work there for a year, figure out what you want to do with your life. And I went there to work in the ER and fell in love with it. It was just, I just really enjoyed it. So went back and got my residency in emergency medicine and practiced for 20 years. And like many people in different careers, you love it for 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, 15, and it starts to evolve. The field started to change, and my love for it was there, but the amount of aggravation and computers and administrative demands kept growing, and it became kind of rote. And the other thing that crept in is I would see, if you're an ER doc, you're going to treat heart attacks. You'd see the guy, 55 years old, having a heart attack. And I kept seeing this pattern emerge, where, okay, we treated your heart attack, yay, we're awesome. You go to the ICU, you go home. I'm going to see you back here in about a year or 2 years. You're going to be back with your second heart attack, and then you're going to be back in 4 years, and now you have congestive failure, now you're on 8 medicines. And I kept seeing that pattern play over and over and over again. I thought, I'm not doing anything. I'm saving their Thursday. I'm not saving their life, I'm saving their Thursday, so that they can come back on a Saturday and complete what they've started. And so medicine does tremendous things. There's amazing technology that we have. But I began to see from that unusual seat of emergency medicine, there's so many things more that we could do to really promote health, because that's what we don't do. In emergency medicine, you don't have your own patients, you're everybody else's patients. So you see what gastro is doing, you see what the cardiologists are doing and what internal medicine is doing. But you also see the flaws where their patients are just kind of limping along and not really thriving. And so the weight of that finally pulled me out of emergency medicine. I didn't want to finish my career with just patching up bullet holes. I wanted to do something to truly help somebody find their health, to truly restore their best version of themselves. And that's when I kind of fell into integrative medicine.
And how did you make that transition initially?
It was hard, and it's funny now that I speak in the A4M and the MMI conferences, because that's the biggest question. I'm an ER doc, and invariably when I give a talk, I say, okay, where are my ER docs? There's always 3 or 4 or 5 in the crowd, because every ER doc is trying to escape the emergency room in some fashion.
You hear that often.
Yeah. And so how you make that transition is different for everybody, but I like talking with physicians about that. I want to help them make the leap that I did, because it truly changed my life. To leave emergency medicine, it was great. It's a great career, don't get me wrong. But getting in integrative medicine, it just reignited my passion. It reignited my love of medicine, because it's so wide open. There's so much more you can do. To actually make the transition, it was funny. I've always been kind of a healthy guy. I told you sports are important. So I've always enjoyed sports and running and doing, and I was never the biggest, the fastest athlete on the field, but I just had that will to be significant. And so I always had to find an edge, and I always thought that nutrition was a part of my edge. I was going to eat better. I was going to have better fuel in the fourth quarter. That's how I was going to outlast you, or whatever it was. And so I always had a love of nutrition, a love of athletics, so a love of just being healthy and feeling good. And so in the ER, most of the nurses and most of the staff and the techs knew that Dr. Huber, oh, he's that healthy guy. He knows about that healthy stuff. And so little by little they would come to me and say, you know, I'm having this kind of problem, or I can't lose weight, or fill in the blank. And you start to get a reputation in that direction. And so I started to hold actually meetings at my house. I would put up sign-up sheets in the nurses station. Hey, if you want to come talk about fill in the blank topics, and just started having conversations with it. So naturally I'm reading. Somebody gave me a pamphlet on bioidentical progesterone. It just, you know, if somebody said, you're a healthy guy, what do you think about this? I looked at it and I said, well, this is amazing, but this can't be real, because if bioidentical progesterone was this amazing, we'd all be using it. Well, that's really what started my trend out of emergency medicine. I started researching hormones and realizing there's a ton of information here, just a ton of it, and we're not using it. And I felt the need, I had to share this with them. It was too important. So my wife, God bless her, knows me so well. And when I get attached to something, I get passionate and I just dive into it. And so I was spending an inordinate amount of time reading on this topic and doing things with nurses and other people. She goes, look, I love that you're passionate about this. You either do something with it or give it up, because it's pulling you away from the family. We need you. And she was right. So I said, all right, I'm going in. And I'll tell you, that was the most nerve-wracking weeks and months of my life, because I had to make an actual decision. Was I going to leave emergency medicine? I have 2 kids and a wife and a house and a solid job with no end in sight, and I'm going to give that up to go to integrative medicine. At some point, you have to tell your employer, I'm leaving and this is my last day. Right? I gave them like 3 to 4 months notice, plenty of notice. But the week before my final shift in the ER, I was covered in hives for a week. So nervous about, would this work out? Is this shift or this? I mean, that's a leap of faith. But I think it takes that kind of commitment. You don't want to ever burn bridges. But for me, there had to be a line in the sand that once I stepped over it, there was no stepping back. And then once I started practicing, it was trial by fire and learning as you go. But there was so much fuel and passion behind doing it, and the rewards. Now think of it. I went from an ER doc where I rush in and I go, Monica, what are you here for? What do you need? I got 2 minutes, right? I don't care about your husband or your kids. I don't even want to know what you do for a living. What's your problem? To an hour appointment. Sit down. Let's talk about it. Tell me how you grew up. Tell me about your family. I mean, it's such a wide swing, but that's what I do now. And again,
how many years has it been?
Almost 10 years of doing integrative practice. So
what did your colleagues in the ER say?
There was a host of reactions. I'll never forget one radiologist, because when you're in the ER, you know the radiologist really well, because you're always bouncing down to have them look at a film or look at a CT or whatever you're doing. And I remember one guy, we had a really good relationship. We didn't spend a lot of time outside the hospital together, but we knew each other really well, liked each other. He looked at me and he goes, so I hear you're leaving emergency medicine to go sell snake oil. And it really hurt. It really did. I think he just meant it as a joke.
Right.
But it diminished what I thought was possible. Right. And then even people I knew, friends, it's really nice that you're doing this thing is there really enough material there to sustain you? I mean, is there enough research? Is there enough stuff?
Did you ever doubt yourself?
Oh, you always have some doubt, right? You always have some doubt. But it's funny, when you get into integrative medicine, anybody in this fellowship will tell you the same thing. Your first day, your first week, your first year, your first 2 years, I would drive home from the office with my wife on the phone saying, I am the dumbest man alive. I don't know anything, because you're going back to medical school. You're going back to the physiology books and pouring through them. And you forget the most basic of things, because in traditional medicine we're taught ICD-9 code, drug therapy. We're done here. Don't ask why he has hypertension. Just put him on Diaban, and we're done. And now you're being asked to really sort through, why is the body doing this? So there's always some doubt. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? But you've got to have that passion that says, nobody else is doing this. Somebody has to do this. You have to be the guy. You've got to step up and you've got to make it happen. And at least for me, that was my drive, right? There wasn't enough people in my hometown of Cincinnati doing this, or what they were doing was subpar.
And what were the first things that you did to implement this into your practice?
So when I very, very, very first started, I had a lovely friend, still do. Dr. Portman is a chiropractor, and he says, I'm not in my office on Thursdays. Just take my office. Do whatever you want. Because realistically, to practice integrative medicine, you need a computer, a printer, and a desk. That's really all you need, right? And then some ideas in your brain. He goes, just take my office. I said, all right. So that was the first leap of faith. I was practicing emergency medicine, but I got a malpractice policy just for this primary care stuff that I was going to do. And one day a week on Thursdays, I would do hormone balance and nutritional counseling, mostly with women, because men never get sick. Just ask them; they'll tell you. I feel fine.
They don't ask for directions either, because they don't.
They don't ask for directions. You know, their feet could be on fire, and they're like, "No, it's a little warm, but I'm okay." So it was mostly with women, and that's where I started, because that's what I knew, and that's what I was passionate about, and that's what I saw not being done in my community. And then from there, grew and ended up partnering with Jim LaValle early on, and of course that was a great mentorship. So from there, things grew.
And how did you get introduced to A4M?
Kind of through Jim LaValle and Andy Heyman. They introduced me to Pam Smith, and I met Pam, and just kind of started developing that relationship. And Jim and Andy and I had, well, ideally, Jim was kind of creating this triad idea of, how to help integrative doctors get a hold of the concepts of integrative medicine. And so we started putting on these conferences in Andy's clinic in Virginia. And they were very small, just a few people, but it's where we got our feet wet in that dynamic. And that's where I really started to lecture to physicians, and then later on moved on to speaking at A4M events, which is a blast. It's just an absolute blast, because every time I have a class and I see folks coming in, I see me in their face. A little scared, a little nervous, curious, excited, hope this works, not sure if I can do it, not sure how to start it. And so it's fun to be there to say, look, if I can do it, you can do it. It's just a great dynamic. It's really one of the great pleasures of my life. My family's super important, my practice I love, but every week I get on the phone with fellows and just kind of talk them through ideas.
Talk them off the ledge?
Well, talk them off a ledge sometimes, but just go through ideas and just reassuringly show them again and again and again. This is not that complicated. It looks big, but you start breaking it down into the pieces, and it's very, very manageable, very doable, and it can change your life. It can change your practice.
So how has your personal life been affected by this trend?
It's interesting, because as an ER doc, you work as much or little as you want. So on average, I'd work 3 to 4 days a week, which meant 3 to 4 days a week I was off. And when you're off as an ER doc, you're way off, right? You don't have a beeper. You don't have any responsibility. You don't have an office. You don't have patients. You're off. And now, I find myself, because I love what I do, I'm always finding ways to engage it, either on reading about it or preparing a lecture or doing some kind of a health event. So it has taken more of my personal life. It has. But in a loving way. Like I tell people, I don't work. I go to an office where I get to play and have fun and engage with people. From my personal life, what's interesting, when you're an ER doc, you become a bit of a skeptic. You get very thick skin. A lot of people are, they're drug seekers, and you're just trying to size people up and make quick judgments, okay? It doesn't work in integrative medicine. And I really had to step back and begin to open myself and just accept that everything you're telling me is 100% gospel. You have no reason to lie to me. And so it's allowed me to see truly the nature of people. And I think that's enhanced my life because I get to share more meaningful moments with people. Where before, as an ER doc, it's more like you're judging and being skeptical and just trying to move them along. So it feels like my world has opened up. I get to meet lots of great people, because everybody is great. Everybody has something wonderful in them. And the other thing that it's helped me to do is to really see the human experience. I know that sounds kind of corny, but when you talk to people day in and day out, you find some common threads. Everybody's stressed. Nobody gets enough sleep. Nobody eats the right diet because we're all just pushed, And I look back to where our great-grandparents lived and then how my parents lived and how I and now this generation lives. Texts and emails and Snapchats and demands. And if you're not moving 20 hours a day, you feel like you're behind. And it's changing our culture. It's changing our relationships that we share. I think it's changing our humanity. And I think we have to be careful that we don't lose everything. Slow down. Appreciate where you are in the moment. And so I may have never gotten to that stage. I may have never appreciated that had I just stayed in emergency medicine. I probably just blissfully ignored the state of humanity and just gone into the woods and chopped down trees. I don't know. But it's different.
Can you reflect back to one of your earlier patients that you really, truly helped?
Barb, really early on. What was amazing to me, you asked, did you doubt yourself? So I'm in my friend's office, his chiropractic office. I'm the only one there. His staff and he are gone for the day. And I'm sitting there to help women with hormones. But there's that little guy in the back of your brain going, you really don't even know enough to be doing this, right? You have no board certification. Everything I was doing was based on what I had simply read. It was based on books and articles and self-taught, trying to be conservative, trying to be safe, but trying to be helpful. And so every time somebody walked in and sat down, that little voice would say, are you good enough? Are you really good enough? And I'll never forget Barb because Barb just trusted me. Everything about her mannerisms, her body language, her voice just said, help me. Just help me. I trust you. And that was significant because I needed somebody at that time to say, I trust you. You're good enough. And so I felt the courage and the strength to help Barb. And we were doing bioidentical hormones. And of course it helped her. And then her husband became a patient. And it really is, even to this day, it's validation. If a patient came in and made an appointment with me, they're saying, I trust you. I need you. I'm counting on you. And that isn't always felt in medicine. Oftentimes that relationship is contentious. Oh, I have to go to the OB-GYN and get my exam, or I have to do this. It's not born out of, I want this. And I trust you. And there's a relationship. There's truly a partnership, not a dictatorship. You will get this scan done, and you will. And so, Barb really was one of the first, and there were others, but she just comes to mind because she just pulled it out of me.
So how did Barb and your other patients earlier in your career, when you made the transition, how did they come to find you?
Word of mouth. Again, I started in the ER. I was the healthy guy. So when I first started, I've told this story so many times to people. I said, you really want to get hormone patients? No problem. Just write the word menopause on a sign and stick it out by the street next to your driveway, and women will just come up and pound on your door and say, what do you know? Because there's just so many women out there that are just suffering through it, and they don't know that there are options. And traditional medicine is telling them, we can treat you with drugs, but just for a little while. It's dangerous. It's not dangerous. So, I forget your question now. But
how patients came to find you?
So a lot of it came from nurses in the hospital, and then nurses telling their friend, hey, I'm a friend of Betty, you work with Betty in the ER. So that's kind of how it started. And then in your neighborhood, because I lived in a small town on the outskirts of Cincinnati, and you get a little reputation, and it's word of mouth, which is gold, right? It's gold. It's better than any billboard, better than any TV ad, because it's people saying, I trust him and you should trust him. And that's really how the majority of my practice still grows today.
Did you receive any criticism from any of your peers in the medical community?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding?
And how did you overcome that?
Through knowledge, really. I remember getting a phone call once from a guy. I was putting this man on some testosterone. And testosterone, this is going back 5, 6, 7 years. Still, even to this day, a little controversial. And there are a lot of docs out there that just haven't read the literature. They're just going based on myth that testosterone is bad for the heart. And I had a doc call me, and he was upset that I was going to put his patient on testosterone, and he was going to call the board, and that's, blood pressure goes up then. And so I just talked to him, and I said, well, here's my logic. Here's what he's struggling with. Here are the numbers. And based on this study, and this study, and this study, we have evidence that shows that he could benefit. I'm not going to take his levels way up here, but I've got to get him to at least here. And about halfway into that, he goes, okay, all right. You could just hear his voice calm down. And he goes, look, obviously you know what you're doing. He goes, there's just a lot of crockpots out there. I'm just trying to protect my patient from crazy people. And I said, I appreciate that. So a lot of times it's just a matter of, even though we may differ in opinion, I have a primary care practitioner in my neighborhood. He's a great guy. He really is. And he's a caring doctor, and he's a very good traditional practitioner. But he doesn't understand integrative technologies, and he really doesn't understand even some of the science behind some of the things that he's doing. And so there have been numerous times where we differed on how this patient should be treated. But the last time I talked to him, he said, okay, we'll agree to disagree, but I'll let you do what you do because you've always treated my patients well. You've always had good outcomes, so we'll just see how it goes. He was concerned about bone density. We're approaching it differently. I wasn't going to use Fosamax. So, you know, a lot of times I find if you just talk with people and don't defend yourself, just talk with them. You know, have a conversation. This is why I'm doing it, and this is the literature. And most docs, they care about their patients. They don't want to see them getting hurt. And if you assure them you know what you're doing, you tend to deflate the situation.
Have you had the experience where any of your peers that are practicing traditional medicine has said, Gary, you know, what is it you're doing? You know, can I get into that? How did you get into that?
Yeah. In fact, as I got into integrative medicine, of course, as you do it and you start having success, you got a new toy and you want to share your new toy with all your friends. And I had a particular friend who was in pain management. He and I had done ER residency together. He had escaped into pain management. I had escaped into integrative medicine. And there's a lot of things you can do in integrative medicine to help with pain. And so I had approached him with this idea. And he was curious about it, but he was a little hesitant to make the jump. But his friend, who was a physician in the area, said, that sounds very interesting. Tell me more. And now this other physician is a practicing integrative medicine doc, very successful. He is delving deeply into autism and Lyme's disease. So yes, sharing it with people you try to infect them with the bug of integrative technologies. And even docs that don't want to do a full-on integrative practice. As you talk with them, they realize, maybe I'll start recommending fish oil, or maybe I'll start recommending a probiotic, or just some of the fringe things that we use in integrative medicine. So I think the practice of medicine is changing, and I think there are a lot of docs out there, and we see them in the conferences. They're frustrated. The system is difficult to manage, and they're not getting the results they want. And so I think the time is ripe. I think it's been ripe, and hopefully we'll see this transition over the next decade into more and more integrative technologies.
And what would you say to someone who is considering making the leap?
Well, I have two people in mind, one of which is my son. My son's getting ready to go to college, and he's interested in medicine. And I said, hold on there, Baba Louie. That's great that you're interested. I said, but you've never seen medicine. You've seen integrative medicine. You need to go practice. You need to go spend a day in a general practice, in a surgical practice, and see what medicine's really like. That's decided this is the field you really want to go into. So I still, I think he wants to go into medicine. That's a great profession, but with some caution. I know some residents right now that are getting their residency in internal medicine and family practice who have spent time in my office. They've shadowed, and I really am praying that one of them wants to come join me. I need a partner. I need help. I'm looking for somebody to come in and help me with the practice we have because it's growing and I can't keep up with it. But somebody who's interested in going into it, I would wholeheartedly suggest to them that this is a wonderful, wonderful field. And I say that I don't know anywhere else in medicine where you get to have this kind of dynamic with patients, but also you get a good quality of life. I mean, realistically, I don't work weekends and holidays, and I don't stay up late at night. So the quality of life is good, but the impact you have on your patients is huge. I mean, we reverse things. We take insulin-dependent diabetics off insulin. We get rid of medications. You can't do that in very many fields in medicine, to actually take a disease and make it go away and reverse it. We manage disease. In integrative medicine, you actually have the opportunity to reverse somebody's physiology, to actually make them physiologically younger. So just the reward there is tremendous. So anybody interested, I would say wholeheartedly trust in yourself, believe in yourself. There is a path. Others before you have done it. If you need help, call me. Because to make that leap, it's such a reward. And there's some work, but there's such a reward.
And those that are fearful of going from insurance-based patients to a fee-for-service practice?
There's a lot of fear there. A lot of fear there. And that's the other thing, too. Some people are just afraid of making the jump because what will their colleagues think? And I've been asked that before. Weren't you worried about what your I never practiced medicine to impress my colleagues. I went into medicine to help people, my patients. I care what they think. You know, it's nice if your colleagues respect you, and I want that, but that's not the reason I do this. So if that's a limiting factor for you, you got to think about that. You will receive criticism. People will put you in their crosshairs, and they will throw bricks. So any doc that's spent any time in an ER has got skin thicker than canvas, so it's not going to bother you. But if you have thin skin, be careful. It's a different dynamic. It's a different beast. The way that I look at it, this is my perspective only, that if you're taking insurance, you work for the big insurance companies. You're an employee, and they control what you do, and you can't order certain labs because they'll smack your hand if you do. I know that. The friend that I help get into integrative medicine has an insurance practice, and he gets audited on a frequent basis, and he gets penalized because he did things that were not what the insurance company wanted him to do. So when the insurance companies are controlling who you are, I see that as imprisonment. I see integrative medicine as freedom. I do what I need to do, and I'm at any time able to move left or right or adjust to fulfill what my patient needs, and I'm not bound by some rules, by some bureaucrat sitting in an office making up rules. I'm making medical decisions in real time for the patient's benefit. So as a practitioner, I see that as freedom, and there are some challenges that come with it, and it's weird, right? Money's weird. You're not allowed to, in public, in general forum, walk up to somebody and say, "What'd you pay for that watch? How much did your house cost? How much did you pay for that car?" There's something weird about money. It's, you know, and when you get into medicine, what does it cost to have an appendectomy? You even ask the surgeon, he'll go, "I don't know," right? So there's this weird thing when it comes to medicine and money, as if we're not supposed to make money, and yet everybody knows that doctors do pretty well, right? But it's somehow just the money secretly just slides in the back door. So it's a big transition to now say, I'm an integrative practice. Here's what I charge. Here are my fees. I'd like a check, please. Because it's face-to-face. It's right up front. So that takes some getting used to. But if you value who you are, and you're not gouging people, and you're being honest, they'll happily pull out their checkbook and say, I agree. That's what you're worth. You've changed my life that much. And realistically, integrative care and being healthy is far and away the cheapest health care on the planet by a factor of 10, right? I have patients that may spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year in my office. They're spending $15,000 on their health insurance policy, and if they engage it, the price just keeps going up, right? So it is still the cheapest form of health care.
Have you had any regrets along the way?
That I didn't do it sooner. You know what? I loved emergency medicine. It was valuable. It gave me a perspective I wouldn't otherwise have. And so I'll never say that emergency medicine was a mistake. It was a blessing. But as far as regrets in doing what I'm doing, no. Do you sometimes wish you'd made slightly different changes or moves at different times? Sure. But overall, no. Not a regret. In fact, I can't, you probably have noticed, I'm a little excited about being in integrative medicine. To say it was a regret, no, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
So where do you hope your practice and or you professionally or personally, where do you hope to be in the next 10 years?
That's a great question because, been doing this for 10 years and the office is growing in buildings. You have to think, well, where do we take this? Where do we go? And we've moved into the space of corporate health. Nobody wants to go into corporate health. But I found that it's an area that's in great need because in my city, there are a lot of very large corporations and you have people sitting behind desks and they're getting really big and they're having healthcare problems. We have an office. Nobody in my office has ever had cancer or any of the big problems, heart attack. So we've made no claims, and yet our insurance goes up 20% every year. That's crazy. So I can't imagine owning a big company where you're paying millions and millions for health insurance. So we started moving into the corporate health arena because what we have found is if we take our general body, our philosophy, and apply it to a larger group, we can amplify or multiply what we do. Instead of doing it one patient at a time, we're doing it 20 or 100 patients at a time. So it's a really cool way to begin to spread that signal of health through a company, to get that ideology of what food really is, of exercise, of sleep, stress management. And the bottom line for the company is huge because when people come to work and they're more focused and they're not falling asleep at their desk at 2 o'clock and they slept better, they're making better decisions and they're smarter. So I think for us, getting this into the corporate health arena is huge because I think the ripple effect will be just enormous. And then secondly, we've got to find a way, when I say we, I mean collectively, the integrative mindset has got to find a way to help people that don't have the finances to come in and pay for care. There has to be a way to, and that's something I'm very committed to. I want to find a way to go into impoverished areas. It's hard to go into neighborhoods where people don't have money and tell them to go buy organic broccoli and buy grass-fed beef. And first of all, they don't really have legitimate access to it. There may not be a grocery store in their neighborhood, and they may not have a car. So how do we get into the inner cities? How do we spread this beyond, middle-class Americans to affect greater change in this country toward better health? We can't keep going the way we're going. We can't let food companies continue to poison us. There has to be some counterbalance to that, to say that what real foods are. And I think it starts in the school systems, and that's another nut to crack, right? Getting into a school system and trying to have I've tried that once. My kids went to a small private school for grade school. And just even in that environment, to go in to people that are open-minded and say, you know what, we could change our food in the cafeteria and it might help our kids. That was a real wrestling match. And anytime you start attacking somebody's foods, you get a lot of pushback. So there has to be a way to make that agenda change.
Any ideas?
Well, I think what I've seen work, it has to be education, but it has to be repetitive. And what we're trying to do in our practice and what I want to see more available, the whole world lives on YouTube and Snapchat. And so materials have to be made available that are quick and informative and easily available. And so our website, from my office, we're posting more videos, we're posting short articles, we're trying to provide the information, and now we have to get people to see it and read it. And I think that has to happen not just on my website, obviously, but every integrative doc in here needs to have some general videos and information to populate, to teach, because it has to come from education. It has to come from word of mouth. I did this, and I feel awesome. You ought to try this, Betty, and you get Betty on board. So that's my humble opinion on how we change the world.
You want to relocate to D.C.?
No, I do not.
Especially now. So what do you do in your time off? Do you have any hobbies?
Oh, love to bike. I just love to bike. And my wife does as well. When I first met her, that's a lot of our first dates were on a bike. So that is my real passion. Of course, when you have kids, your hobbies become whatever your kids are doing because that's what you're relegated to. And your friends become whoever they decide to play sports with. So fortunately, both of my kids are soccer players, and my daughter's teams, I'm very lucky because the parents can either be a nightmare or they can be awesome. And right now, the group that we're hanging with is awesome. So we go to a lot of soccer games. She's only a sophomore in high school, but she has a soccer scholarship.
Congratulations. And
my son is a very, very achieved soccer player, and he's starting to play rugby. So a lot of what we do in our spare time is we go to their sporting events. But oftentimes I will bike to their game. And then yeah. So that's what I love the bike because it's just so liberating and the mind just calms down and you're just seeing things you wouldn't see if you were in a car. and it just feels so good. So that is, my wife loves pottery. I gotta get her into that pottery room more often though, because she works in the office. I couldn't run the office without her. She is truly the lifeblood of that office. But I need to get her out of there so she can do more pottery. That's what she loves.
How did you meet your wife?
Blind date. I was that, people were getting the question, what's up with Gary? Because he's like in his mid-30s and he's single. It starts to draw some questions. I just had never met her right now. And I was a blind date. Met Beth when I was 36, and I think she was 34, in that ballpark. And neither of us had been married, and neither of us had kids. Like, that's rare. Within 6 months, I asked her to marry me, and within 6 months of that, we were married. It was that quick. When I found her, it was like, where you been? I've been waiting. Where have you been? And since then, it's just been a joyous ride. So
That's beautiful.
Very happily married, very lucky.
Sounds like it. So do you keep a bucket list?
I don't. I think every day. I guess loosely in my mind, there are certain things that I want to see. And I guess I bristle a little bit at the idea of a bucket list, because it's almost like I have to do these things. It's like today. I think the biggest problem today is people's to-do list, because they feel like they have a 6-page to-do list and they have to get it all done by 9 o'clock tonight. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. A to-do list is never going away. And I think it creates a pace and almost an expectancy that you have to be moving all the time. There's nothing wrong with sitting still. There's nothing wrong with just being and just breathing and just enjoying the moment. And so the idea of a bucket list, it's a list. I do have some loose things in my mind that I want to see happen. I want to go out to Glacier National Park and bike up there. I want to go to Italy with my wife. We're going to do that this summer. So there are a few things I'd like to do. But really what I want to do is I want to live every single day in the moment. That's what I really, really want. That's my bucket list. That when my daughter comes home and tells me about what happened at her school, at her game, that I'm truly there and truly hearing it and living in that moment. Or that I can really see the pain on my son's face when he's trying to get through organic chemistry, which he's trying to do right now. That to me, and just being with my wife and being in the moment. I'm not a big world traveler. Don't really want to be. If I got to see China, that'd be cool, but my wife and I, every time my wife and I travel, we're there for 2 days and we're like, when are we going home again? It's nice to get there, but you're in a strange bed and everything's rushed. And so, no, I'm not a big bucket list person.
Who do you seek inspiration from?
People that are doing anything that hasn't been done before. And it doesn't matter if it's in sports or science or politics. And no matter what your political persuasions are, and I'm not going to declare mine right now, but the fact that a businessman has gotten into the presidential office is just amazing, So I have to step back, and whether you're pro or con, respect what has happened and how limits, because really that's integrative medicine. Here are the rules of medicine. In integrative medicine, we go, okay, move that over there. We respect it, we acknowledge it, we practice standard of care, but I think we go beyond that. So I respect anybody who can challenge the boundaries and say, this has never been done before? Oh, let me try it. Like Venus Williams right now, coming back at the Australian Open, right? She could have easily checked out. She's got enough trophies. Everybody knows who she is. She's rich and powerful and famous. But there was that inner drive that they said, you can't come back from Sjogren's. You can't come back from this. And she said, I think I can. And I'm going to do it my way. I love watching the UFC. For some, they find that abhorrent. But I love the nature of it. These are true warriors. And when you look at a guy like Conor McGregor, whether you like him or not, he did something that's never been done before, right? He held two belts in 2 different divisions at the same time. So I just love and admire anybody who's willing to say, I see that brick wall, and it's not intended to keep me out. It's tended to challenge to see how badly I want to get through it or over it. And that's what I truly respect and love.
Do you have a mentor?
I think we all should have mentors, and I think I have many over the years. And I think they arrive in your life when you need them, and then sometimes they kind of fade away. Absolutely, I have some mentors. And I'm going to resist naming some of them at the risk of offending others, because I have many in science, in medicine, in life. So yeah, but I think it's important to have mentors. And I try to put myself out there as a mentor to those that can benefit, right? I mean, you can't tell somebody, I'm going to be your mentor. But for those that jump on your bandwagon and say, I like this, help me. Okay. I like that role. I think we all need to pay it forward in some way. I think the world becomes better when we take our strengths and we put them out there for general consumption rather than hoarding them and charging a large fee to have access to them. You know, I think there's just a different nature there.
So if you weren't a physician or an airline pilot, what would you be doing?
Wow. Great question. I'm so fascinated with the human body. I spend so much of my time in that milieu. What else would I do? I can tell you what I love to do. I don't know if I could support a family and kids, but I just love being outdoors. I just love being in the woods. I love...
Forest ranger?
A forest ranger. I mean, I love that environment. I feel complete when I'm in that environment. How I'd make a living at it, I have no idea. I don't think, harvesting trees from a forest is really what I'm meant to do. That's a good question. I don't really have a great answer.
So what would you say has been the most rewarding part of your journey?
The most rewarding part of the journey is freedom. And my wife and I talk about that a lot. Just comparing what I did to what I do. Because what I did, there was lots and lots and lots of rules and walls. And you worked for a group. And the leadership of that group gave you their rules. And the hospital gave you their rules. And the insurance company gave you their rules. And those rules have to be there. It's important. We don't want general chaos. But you felt very pigeonholed. You could do this. Okay? And now, and by the way, my father, who was one of the driving forces in my life, an amazing man, owned his own business. He was a meat cutter. He did not like you calling him a butcher. He was not a butcher. He was a meat cutter. Because meat cutter, there was some class to that. And he ran truly the finest butcher shop, whoops, sorry, Dad, in Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati Magazine, the best of everything, the best hair salon, the best this. His meat shop cutter was the best meat cutter, the best shop. So was Huber Meats. But he was in business, and I watched him in business, and I watched him manage employees and unions trying to come in and all these different things. And I went, oh my God, no. And he was a workaholic. He owned his own business, so he was a workaholic. And I went into medicine knowing that I did not want to be that guy, that I wanted to be home to be with my kids. I wanted to be more present. And that's why emergency medicine was so attractive. I could work 3 days a week. I'm home 4 days a week. That's awesome. So I never wanted to leave. I didn't have to bill. I didn't have to hire anybody. I didn't have any staff. It was just that carefree lifestyle. And then now I own a practice. So we talk about freedom, freedom from the rules of emergency medicine, but there's some responsibilities that come with the practice, but you're in control. You get to decide everything, the color of the walls, the policy with patients. You get to decide. And you can take that as a burden, or you can take it as an opportunity to change the rules, okay? And we did that with our staff. When we first, I never had staff. I never hired anybody. So you have to have that employee contract. Well, employee contracts were 2 to 3 pages long, and they, you must bathe, and you must not do this, and don't chew gum, and all these stupid rules that a kindergartner is taught. And I looked at those. Now I'm going to be a business owner, theoretically a position of responsibility. I said, this is stupid. I have to make a grown adult sign this that says they won't spit on the floor. I mean, it's just dumb, right? So we had 3 things in our employee contract. Number 1 was treat other people like you wanted to be treated. Come to work with a good attitude, ready to do your job and do it well. And rule number 3 was don't be an asshole. That's what we wrote. You know why? We wanted our office to be a group of friends coming together for a common purpose. And how do you behave when you're with your friends? You treat them nicely, and you watch out for them, and you're kind to them. Because if you don't, what happens? They don't call you anymore for Super Bowl parties. They stop calling you to tell you they're going to Starbucks for a cup of coffee, right? You get ousted. Why should work be any different? You should come to work with the attitude of, these are my friends. I want to help them. They want to help me. We're all going to pitch in. This is a team. And if you don't fit in, go. If this is not where you like to be, don't be here. So people walk into our office, and I commonly hear this. They go, man, the vibe in here is just awesome. Everybody's happy to be here. Everybody's always smiling. Yeah, because we like each other. We're good to each other. We're friends. And it's difficult to make friends of everybody at work, but you can find a way to care about somebody on some level, no matter who they are. So that freedom to create that environment is fun. It's fun for Beth and I to create that environment where people love to come to work and they're respected and they're listened to. Because if you create that environment, the patients feel that, and the patients feel respected and listened to, because they are.
So when you go and you speak at A4M events,
Yeah.
and whether it's as a keynote or as an instructor, how do you hope to inspire your constituents or peers who are here? And what do you hope that your message is to them?
Wow. The message, kind of twofold. Number one, that what we're doing is not snake oil. The amount of literature that supports and promotes what we're doing would fill this hotel. Traditional medicine often points an accusatory finger and says, there's no literature to support that. No, no, no. The correct statement is, you haven't read any of the literature, but there's ample literature to support this. So I really hope every time I talk and every time one of the professors talks, we're telling you something that's different from the norm, and it's backed by very significant, powerful, in-depth research. This is not snake oil. This is real. And the other thing, I love busting down myths. You know how many myths we practice in traditional medicine, how many myths there are? You know, if you have diverticulitis, you shouldn't eat seeds and nuts because they can get... You know, that's never been tested. Eggs cause heart disease. That's been shown. That's all based on really bad research back in the 1950s. It's garbage. And yet these myths continue. So one of the things I love to do in any lecture, I'm gonna do it in about 2 hours, is break another myth about sex hormone binding globulin. But I love breaking down myths to show them, look, there are some basic relationships that are constant. And if you're told something and it violates this ideology of this consistency of physiology, you should question it. Question it, question it, question it, until you see proof that it's real or false. Because there's so many things we accept. We take them on as truth and they're not. And so we're practicing bad medicine if we're practicing myths.
So what do the terms functional, integrative, regenerative, anti-aging, what does this mean to you, and how would you define it?
It's funny, people always want to say, is that different? Is this different? Is holistic different than that? You know, they're words that imply a similar ideology. And to me, they're interchangeable. And I know people will say, no, that's not true. There's subtle differences. There probably are some subtle differences. But what all of those words really stand for is a general ability to change my paradigm of thinking, to say there's more to health than just drugs. That's what all those stand for. That whether you're deep into nutrition, and that's the other thing too, how many ways are there to get rid of migraine headaches? I don't know, 8, 20? Because whether it's diet, whether you believe in acupuncture, deep tissue massage, herbals, botanicals, meditation, I've seen migraine headaches abated with all kinds of different approaches. So all those words mean to me is I'm willing to look outside the traditional box. I'm willing to explore other therapeutic modalities. Long before the AMA existed, people were getting sick and practitioners were getting them well, whether it was Ayurvedic medicine or homeopathic medicine or herbs of different kinds. I mean, it's been around for ages. So I bristle against the idea that we're going to define medicine just by FDA-approved drug therapies.
So what modalities do you incorporate into your practice?
As many as humanly possible. I think that's, and again, to the person that's just starting, you start with basic things, you know, nutritionals and supplements. And I think as you master more and more things, you keep reaching for greater modalities. I really caution the new fellows in the fellowship, look, don't even think about heavy metal detox. Get good at doing the basics. Get good at gut health and adrenal and the use of botanicals and different things. And then begin to expand, because the sky is the limit, right? We can get into heavy metal detox. We can get into IV UV light therapy for Lyme's disease. We can get into all kinds of IV therapies and different modalities. And it's funny when you go to the A4M events and then the big venue where all the vendors are. Oh my gosh. There's some really crazy stuff in there, right? And some of it's really cool, and some of it, who knows?
How do you decide what to put into your practice?
Man, keep it simple, stupid, right? Keep it simple. I think sometimes we get beyond ourselves, trying to find a whiz-bang cool toy, when realistically they haven't mastered nutrition and meditation and the basics of life. And that's always going to be the case. If you have somebody with horrible gut issues and horrible sleep issues, and you're trying to treat their heavy metals, you know, you can't put that cart before the horse. So I think there are some really cool technologies, and in the right hands, I think they can be really helpful. But I think so many times, in an effort to look for a really cool toy, we miss the basics. We forget that nutrition and sleep and gut health are the heart of what makes you able to repair, and we pass by that to go to this really cool repair thing, whatever this thing may be. So I think toys are fun, but again, they have to be used properly.
So what do you implement into your own personal life?
Oh, goodness. I love life. I love my wife and I love my kids. And because of that, I want to be here a long time. And I don't want to be here. I've heard people say, I don't even want to live to be 80 because you're just in a nursing home dribbling on yourself. You could be, all right? But I know a gentleman, the pastor that married my wife and I is 91 or 92, 91, 92. He just finished a trip from Columbus to California on a 3-wheeled motorcycle, okay?
Incredible.
Yeah, why not? Why can't he? The reason he can is because he told himself he could, and he took care of himself. And he didn't allow other people to put limits on him. Some people might have said, that's too dangerous, he shouldn't do it. I know darn well he'd rather die on that motorcycle than live cautiously. And I'm not saying you should live recklessly, but I want to live a long time. So everything that I do with my patients, I have done. Everything. Everything from any diets that I've recommended, any exercise that I've recommended, any supplements, I have to be the first one to try them. And my wife, and my kids. So I practice what I preach. I eat and I sleep. In fact, when I left emergency medicine, if you know anything about ER docs, we don't sleep worth the tinker's damn because it's crazy, right? You get called in the middle of the night, you're working night shifts, and then it's just crazy. And one of the things that I said when I left there is I could feel my health eroding. I could feel my brain getting mushy. I could see my body getting soft, and I thought, this is too early. I'm not ready to go down yet. And so one of the things when I left emergency medicine, I said, you've got to sleep 7.5 hours uninterrupted every night. You're going to cultivate, you're going to build brick by brick that sleep pattern. And I did, and I sleep. I haven't used an alarm clock in 5 to 6 years. I didn't use one this morning because when I go to bed, I know I'm going to sleep 7.5 hours, and my body's going to wake up right around 5:30 because it always does, right? Because I allow it to. I don't drink from plastic. Now I'm here in Florida, and I go to Starbucks because I love Starbucks. And I have to drink from that plastic lid. I could take the lid off, but I'm very, very intentional getting plastics out of my life, getting organic foods in. These are not hard things to do. And that's the challenge, getting people to believe that you can do these, because they're not hard to do. But just being intentional about it, because it has a payoff. Because when I'm 80, I'm going to be able to sit in this chair and be as active and feel as alive as I do right now. I want that. I palpably want that. And when I want that for me, I want that for you, and I want it for all of my patients. I want to infuse my neighborhood with that ideology, you know, that stuff you're trying to sell me isn't good enough. It's not good enough. So if I can infuse that passion in other people and just take control of your life. So believe me, when we talk about integrative medicine, I practice everything that I preach to the letter, Because even though I do hormone therapies, I don't want to have to take hormone therapies until I really, really, really need them, okay? Meaning I want my body to produce its own on its own. And if I stop poisoning it, it will. If I sleep, it will. It's the people that get into bad habits that need those hormone therapies. So, yeah, it's from morning to night. Just yesterday, I was listening to Jim LaValle talk. I love Jim, and he was talking about banana flour and fiber in the diet and resistant starch. These are things I know about. But at every moment, I was questioning myself to say, are you doing this as well as you can be doing it? Maybe you should be getting some more resistant starch in your diet. So if we're all willing every day to just be open to new ideas and make little micro adjustments, just little things, they become habits. Habits become who you are. Who you are continues to get younger and younger and younger as you grow older. It doesn't have to be a state of decay. It doesn't have to be.
Thank you.
You're welcome.